Well, welcome to today's session here at AWS in San Francisco. Thanks for coming out. We've got a number of partners here to really help us focus on how we're going to leverage open source solutions to bring AI innovation to real product market fit and solutions. I'm John Lawrence. I lead the solutions architecture function for the AWS SaaS Factory. We're a partner organization that helps our partners build best-in-class AI and SaaS businesses. We advise both on the business and technical side of the house. We're here because Omnistrate organized you all and organized partners to help us understand how to build better, faster, stronger, and cheaper, hopefully. So thank you for coming. So we've got a number of partners here. We have Anyscale, Confluent, Couchbase, OneHouse, and Omnistrate. These are your speakers that you're going to be seeing today. Each one of them comes from the orientation of open source, saw a need for a managed solution, produced a world-class managed solution, and all these pieces kind of fit together in a spectrum to help us create agentic applications for the future. So you'll get introduced to each one of these as they come up on stage here. Each speaker's got about 20-25 minutes, followed by a little bit of Q&A. So please have your questions ready for them there at the end of their talks. So we're going to dive right in and say, what are we really doing here? So what's most important as an early stage company or early stage offering is really accelerating our stages of product maturity. So at the very beginning, right, we have scarcity of time, talent, cash, resources. We also don't know if what we're making has got an audience. We have a hunch. We've got to be able to test that. We've got to move fast. So a lot of us are using vibe coding or AI-driven development offerings to create that often to create the end user experience to start with. And most of us hopefully are striving for kind of no ops CI/CD and DevOps experience because as any of you have built on the cloud, there's a lot of mechanics to get on there. So this is where Omnistrate can come in and save you some time on that. So the next stage is we get to growth, the product market fit. Now we have data. We're going to manage that data. And that's where you'll see some of our partners start to fit into the picture here. And we use partner services for that. So AWS has a huge, deep bench of both consulting, but also technology partners. And that's who's here today to solve problems at a kind of level of the stack and the value chain beyond some of the primitives that you might be building on kind of bare compute and storage. And then lastly, most of us founders and early stage folks ultimately want to win the prize of the enterprise, right? That's where usually the high dollar sale is, the complexity is, and a bigger company comes out of. And really to be able to manage all of this, we also start dealing with control plane issues. How do I control all these different managed services? How do I control all these tenants I have on my cloud environments? And that's where partners like Omnistrate come in. So ultimately, when we start a company in the cloud, ideally we get to market. Many of us target the AWS marketplace as an ideal go-to-market target for PLG-driven growth. So again, you're going to see an example here with our next couple of speakers about how you get there fairly quickly. So I've been thinking a lot about this lately, like what is the stack? So I've been building on the stack since it was old days, assembly code. Don't even want to say that. So what's the modern stack today? It really is a control plane to control a bunch of high order services. We should be building on the biggest building blocks we have to build faster. In the age of AI, innovators are all using the same kinds of AI to think through, to ideate, to create PRDs, to create their user stories, and then to create their code. So time to market is really key. So if we integrate agent orchestrators, which are platforms that sit on top of the LLMs, both offered by AWS and our partners, we're able to build agentic first SaaS, software as a service companies, and then integrate managed services for data storage, data lakes, as you'll see, other kinds of compute offerings, machine learning to really help us go faster than, again, using just kind of some of the basic services. And then lastly, what we're seeing is emerging platforms. So these are platforms that help with our distribution. So platform you're all familiar with is the mobile phone, right? That is a platform of value distribution for your software as a service offering. React has kind of won the web in terms of the browsers. You see companies like Vercel having taken away a lot of undifferentiated heavy lifting for DNS and load balancing and all the stuff that was complicated before for that distribution point. So the combination of these services, to me, makes up the kind of modern high-speed development stack of the cloud today. So this is just kind of a picture of that. So on the bottom, we see what AWS and the cloud services have traditionally provided. We've got our compute, storage, and networking services that some of us are still building straight on, and sometimes we need that. But then we have higher order services that are represented by AWS partners that fill in the rest of the gaps, that allowed us to build less and assemble more, I like to say. So over here on the far left, we see our traditional, I'll call it the value endpoint, or what we would think of as the application stack, something like our mobile phone, something like our browser in a normal web application. And on the right is also now a value endpoint. These are AI agents. These are kind of a headless experience. These are the things that are doing the work for us. And then in the middle is the data core. So a lot of, excuse me, a lot of the AI-driven kind of vibe coding offerings allow us to really quickly render that end user experience. But all of that has to be backed by a really good data platform. And so fortunately, we're blessed with a lot of matured managed services, which had a lot of their starts in open source. And you're going to see some of them today. And then a lot of these layers get connected by a data streaming or an eventing layer or an asynchronous flow layer, we might call it. And partner Confluent, they represent a kind of vendor that actually can bring a lot of this signaling together. So you'll see in more detail in each of their presentations how that works. We still got the AWS cloud here at the base of all of this. We can still program straight to the sort of more smaller primitives, but we can use this kind of bigger primitives here at the top. And this doesn't represent all the kinds of AWS partners that there are to build on top of, but just the core ones we're going to talk about today. So next, I want to introduce the control plane. So you've got all these services. They may be in your AWS environment. They may cross multiple AWS accounts. They may be multiple vendors. How do you control that? And that's this idea of a control plane as a service that you can introduce into your stack. So I'd like to introduce Kamal and Alok from Omnistrate to the podium here and turn it over to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, John, and thank you everyone for coming by and stopping by here. I'm Kamal, one of the co-founders. I also have a partner in crime here, Alok, who is our other co-founder. And yeah, first of all, thank you to everyone and welcome to this great event put together by AWS and some of the amazing AWS partners. So really excited to talk to you guys, people here, and a lot of people who have joined us online. So all right, so let's just continuing the thread that John was laying out. If you think about the journey a developer takes, typically they start from an idea, they build some design, they build an app, and that's usually the technology innovation side of it to bring an idea to life. But that's just one half of the story. And that's where we have today a lot of the other AWS partners who will come and talk about what are the different building blocks that you can use to build your application faster and quicker and efficiently. But then that's just half of the battle. The other half of the battle is to do the business innovation, to go from application to product and build your distribution model or distribution channel. Think of it like a FedEx for app distribution, right? Today, that problem is essentially solved by organization individually. We just happen to be the one who is making it easier so that everybody doesn't have to reinvent the wheel and they can focus on building their application, focus on innovation and solving the real problems. One of the fundamental challenges that exist is building the distribution model or distribution channel takes years to build and army to operate. With Omnistrate, you can just bring your application, bring your AWS account ID, and configure the deployment or distribution channel the way you want, and voila, you get it. And that's all about it. You don't have to worry about managing tenants, subscriptions, deployments, infrastructure, billing, automating operations, integrating with different developer tooling, either it's open source or SaaS integration. All of that is taken. And as all the world is evolving, your application is evolving, your customers are evolving, AWS is moving at the speed of light, the ecosystem is moving at its own needs, the new regulatory requirements are coming out. This control plane will make sure that you're future-proof. You're not locked into certain set of choices that you have made. And that is our mission here, to make it simpler for everyone to get to that journey. Now, in this session, I'm going to focus on the last mile. The overall event focuses on getting from an idea to product. We are going to work backwards. We are at the AWS office. We're going to work backwards. We're going to do the last mile first, go from application to the product, and then the rest of the partners will talk about the other tools that are available to make it easier for you to go from an idea to product. Oh, sorry, idea to applications. My bad. So what are the different distribution models? Let's jump in a little bit in. So if you guys remember pre-AWS era, the way the software was distributed was essentially you take a package, you take a application, you package it, you version it, you give it to your clients and distributor clients, and essentially that was it, right? And customers have to do a lot of things. They have to install, they have to figure it out if the issues happen, they have to worry about upgrades, they have to troubleshoot, and all of that was manually coordinated, right? And then came the era, as you can see today, the world is moving towards the beautiful agentic SaaS, where the experiences are personalized experiences. So if you think about, for example, for when you watch movies, Netflix is what? It is one of the agentic SaaS application. You just sit down and say, hey, I feel like just watching an adventure movie. And that's it. You get recommendation and you start playing. You're not worried about selecting which movie particularly you're going to watch. You just choose it. The recommendations are right there in front of you, right? So the level of abstraction, and if many of you have seen and been there 2 decades ago, you probably remember the experience of Blockbuster or CDs, how we used to distribute content. The same way with the software. Now, what are some of the challenges when we talk about different distribution models? So first of all, Omnistrate support all the distribution models and different configurations. So we want to be a general purpose, allow you to build your general purpose control plane that can support any distribution model. So, and there is if you think about it, there is a value proposition in having different of them, and I'm just going to quickly talk about that. So if you, for example, thinking about on-prem, even though it is one of the basic distribution model, it's still needed for the air-gapped environments or the private data center sitting in somewhere in Saudi Arabia. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to distribute software, right? There is no cloud there. So, but the challenges still exist because you still have to package the software, you still have to templatize the software, you still have to version the software to create that one-click installer experience. That challenge still exists. The challenge still exists to create the seamless upgrade experience with proper versioning. The challenge still exists to have an operational CRM database where you can know who are my tenants, what subscriptions they have, what billing they have, what version of the software they're running. Is there any operational history to it? You can keep track of in your head for 5 customers. Good luck with 1,000 customers. For those of you who have done it here, know very well, no amount of people will be able to keep that in sync in their head all the time, in real time. You need essentially an operational CRM. And that's what on-prem distribution takes. But when you go to like now to BYOC, for example, or bring your own cloud, whatever we call it, you have more challenges. Now you need to be able to automate deployments. And automate deployments not only in your account, but also automate in customers' accounts securely without compromising on the experience. And then some of the customers may come back and say, oh, that's great, Kamal, but I really like security. I really don't like to maintain even an outbound connection from my organization to the provider organization because I'm just worried about security. So how do you now create this experience where they get the help when they need, otherwise they can operate offline? And then comes an experience of PaaS, and many of you may have familiar, like have seen RDS, have seen Couchbase. People who are familiar with Confluent would probably saw Confluent dedicated clusters. The experience was like that. You configure the number of units you want, and that's it. You can self-serve. You can be sitting in your comforter at 2 a.m., triggering a deployment, and getting within 2 minutes a database running in the cloud somewhere. Or you can choose, you can customize it still. But the challenges are, how do you make it self-serve for the customers that works at scale? How do you make the billing usage-based? How do you now automate the operations? And you have to automate the operations such that you don't compromise, you do it that is secure, cost-effective, and reliable. And now if you go further up and look at the HubSpots of the world, Ripplings of the world, Pulleys of the world, they are living on another level, or even Confluent journey now. You go to the and sign into the Confluent, you get an endpoint. You don't worry about it, where it is running. You don't even trigger a deployment. The deployment concept doesn't exist. You just get and log in, and it's just launched, is there. Use it. Many of you may have used NeonDB. You don't go and create deployments, sit there for even 2 minutes. But the challenges are, how do you now provide to the customer an experience where they don't have to worry about the performance, the scale, and the cost without compromising the reliability and security, and yet provide that beautiful experience that it can scale whenever it needs to scale. It can scale down when it needs to scale down. And then we have this Agentic SaaS, which is the new era of frontier, which is opening us. And if you look at today's experience of HubSpot, many of you may be familiar with that. It's all static workflows. The experience that Steve may have, that Alina may have, Alex may have, is all, if we are even part of the same organization, our experience will still be the same. The only difference could be that some of us may have more access control than the others. But other than that, it's same workflows, same static workflows. That is the state of the art of the SaaS today. And the new frontier of the Agentic SaaS is personalized experiences. They know if Steve is the founder of Couchbase, what experience to show as a HubSpot application to Steve. They know if there is a developer out there, what experience of HubSpot to show to them. And what does that mean now? So that is the, some of, at least hopefully you guys got some idea that how the complexity and innovation in this distribution model exists at different levels. And what we have done here is, instead of taking an approach of all or nothing, we have taken an approach of building adapters at each layer. So you can start your journey, or you can have already one of the distribution models. But if you want to extend your distribution model to other distribution models, you can do so. For example, you're starting with, you have an open source project, you have nothing, you have just container images. We can go all the way to PaaS or SaaS or Agentic SaaS you want. But if you say, oh, look, I already have an on-prem distribution, I've already built some sort of a Helm or operator or Terraform, put it together, no problem. We can take that and build PaaS and SaaS experiences. But you might say, okay, I know I actually also automated the deployments. We can make it multi-cloud, we can make it global, we can make it version agnostic, we can make it environment agnostic, so your developers can work in parallel and collaborate. And pre-prod is different from the prod, and you're not testing in prod. All of those dimensions, otherwise you have to think about it. As a platform, you can think of this as a co-pilot for the platform teams to make it so simple for the, and so that application teams are not worried about now all these end dimensions. And so those are some of the technology pieces that we built. This is a little bit of the technical slide, and I just want to clarify some of the, what does it mean a little bit more technically. So when we typically talk about control plane, it has several layers to it. One of them is the tenant management, which is like, how are you going to store your tenants? How are you going to onboard your tenants? How are you going to isolate your tenants? How are the subscription for the tenants are managed? How is the billing going to be managed? Then there's a part about the deployments, and I talked about different deployment distribution models already. Then there's the infrastructure management. How do you make a universal infrastructure management where you now are not dealing with this cloud and this region and this account and this environment and this version? You have a holistic view. You have a universal infrastructure layer on which you can operate at. What about automating the operations? So you have the security controls to achieve compliances, cost insights and controls to save cost, operational controls to reduce the MTTR and scale your operations. All of that takes a lot of time and energy. And finally, the most important piece is the integration with the existing ecosystem. Let's be honest, all of us have preferences. I have preferences towards certain tool. I may like Datadog, the other person may like New Relic, the other person may like Signos. And that's fine. And the evolution of the needs of the business may also change over time. So how do you now build this general purpose control plane that can integrate with new technologies, upcoming technologies, existing technologies in different areas, whether it is alerting, authentication, billing and metering, observability, and so on. And so for that in mind, basically we have something called control plane as a service, where you can come in and give us a spec, which is like essentially like a DSL, domain specific language, and we also have an extension to Docker Compose, and we built your control plane and deploy that control plane in your account. And from that account, it manages all of your tenants, your deployments, infrastructure, irrespective of whether the deployments are happening in your account or your customer's account. Here I'm going to just quickly clarify that control plane usually comes with two pieces, two faces. How about that? One is the face for your customers, and one is the face for your internal teams. Read this slide, please, as like a speedometer. So it's getting more and more complex or more and more advanced from left to right. And so this is how the customer product, like on the distribution channels we were talking about, you have the needs of the on-prem installer, then you make it multi-cloud and BYOC, then make it self-serve, you make it, more SaaSify and get the agentic experiences, and so you go from there. And similarly, from the platform team perspective, they also need to know, they need to have a need for upgrades across tenants and versions, the operational visibility, reliability, cost, and how do you now have even with the era of AI, imagine your application needs to be also integrated with the AI ecosystem, and you need to get the feedback of how it is operating and working. We have a lot of customers. I'm going to quickly show you guys a quick demo of how a simple on-prem installer looks like. This is a recorded demo of 2 minutes. And then Alok is going to do a live demo of how to do a more advanced PaaS and SaaS experiences. So you get to see in practice what each one of them looks like.
One of the most popular distribution mechanisms is on-prem installs. Startups that have built their application and are ready to go to market often begin with a basic on-prem distribution model. This is typically the first step to gain field experience and gradually build more advanced distribution channels. In many cases, on-prem is not just a short-term solution, it becomes a long-term necessity, especially for reaching customers operating in air-gapped or private data center environments, where this is the only viable delivery method. In this model, software providers ask clients to purchase a license, Visit an artifacts library, choose a version, download the software, install it, and then begin using it. Day 2 operations, such as upgrades and troubleshooting, are manually managed by the client, often through direct coordination with the provider or via the community in the case of open source software. Common challenges in this model include packaging, versioning, deployment templatization, coordinating deployment steps with customers, seamless upgrade paths, collecting basic troubleshooting data such as logs and metrics, and enforcing licensing to prevent unauthorized use. In this video, we will see how you can distribute a Postgres installer with the PG Vector extension to your clients. Let's see it in action. First, let's try to log in and create a deployment instance. Note that this won't trigger an actual deployment yet, but it will create a deployment instance with an installer for your customers to deploy or upgrade. Let's select the plan and then the plan version. For the sake of this demo, we'll go with the defaults and hit Create. As you can see, the custom installer is being built, and as soon as the deployment instance lifecycle status changes from creating to ready, your customers can download and install it. Let's click on the instance we just created. You can see the deployment configuration you chose for this instance. Click on the Installer tab, and you'll see the Install Setup Guide. Your customers can simply run these commands in their on-prem environment. Let's hit the Download button to download the installer. You can now see the install script. I'll go to the PG Vector directory and run the installer. Oops, looks like we've hit an issue. To automate debugging, we also provide an AI assistant for your customers to help them troubleshoot and resolve problems. Let's paste the error into the AI assistant we've built for you. Given the deployment context, it has suggested 3 possible root causes in order of likelihood. Let's try the first recommendation and run the installer again. Voila! Your customer's installation has successfully completed, and they can start using the application. In the same way, they can upgrade or update their deployments at any time and track all changes in the audit logs history. As you can see, we not only automated the on-prem installer, but also streamlined updates and upgrades, enabled license checks, templatized the installation process for easy reuse, and provided a simple portal for your customers to manage their installs, including subscriptions and billing. Finally, even though it's not shown here, we've collected all contextual information in one centralized place to give you product insights across all of your customers, right from your operations center.
Hopefully that gave you guys some idea of what an on-prem installer and some of the challenges it entails. I would now like to welcome Alok to give a live demo on a PaaS and SaaS experience and how that looks like.
Okay, so I'll make this quick. I just wanted to quickly show you what we have today, right? As an indie dev, startup, enterprise, doesn't matter. Essentially, you have a number of different personas we serve. What is your interface to essentially getting started today? And so what better way to do it than just show you, just get started right from the meat of it, which is the code, right? So we have a GitHub repo here, and this is an open source project, of course, and we'll share this with you freely. And so it kind of represents both, the models that we are trying to target, which is the PaaS model as well as the SaaS model. And especially, we are trying to show you something that's a little bit more geared towards agentic AI and how, staying in tune with the times, how does it actually work? So first step, of course, you clone the code. I already have an IDE with all of this set up. So let me just zoom in a bit here. And so it's a simple single line of literally one command, right? All the command does is it references the specification that Kamal was talking about. And as you can see, it's just literally nothing but a Docker compose. But for the keynote, you will notice that there is some extensions that we've added, so which is basically specific to Omnistrate. And as you can see, it's literally just a bunch of extensions you add to your existing compose specification, and then we will create a portal out of it. So just to be sensitive with time, I'm going to show you what the final output looks like. So let's just pick this up. Give me 1 second. Let's go to production. Let's pick this up. So this is literally the portal that comes out of it. And so this is particularly relevant for you, especially when you have to do these things. Let's say, you list this in the AWS marketplace, or distribute the URLs or the endpoint itself to your customers, right? So I'm going to log in as one of the users here who is a user of Data Lab. And as you can see, literally they have, again, I'm talking about specifically from a PaaS perspective. What they get out of the box is an out of the box self-serve portal where they can go in, select Data Lab, create, there's a bunch of plans that you can offer, as we were discussing, whether it's deploying in your customer's account, whether it's multi-tenancy, whether it's a single tenant isolated deployment. There's a number of things that you can offer. And let's say AWS right here, and then I'm going to, fill in something and try to deploy. And I'll also show you what the final thing looks like. Again, just sensitive to time here. And the final thing is literally a summary of the deployment, the connectivity endpoint, the nodes, the metrics, live logs. Essentially, everything starts flowing to your customers, right? So this is, as I said, this is fully self-serve. Think of, you have an open source project. You need the fastest way to get it in the hands of your customer. This is it, right? Now, this is obviously great, and your customers starting to use this. This is perfect. But it's still a step a little too much, where they actually have to go and deploy this, choose the account, choose the region, all of those, right? So that's where the SaaS portion of it comes in. So the SaaS portion of it, which is where you completely abstract that out, where you provide your customer with like an outcome-based pricing or usage-based pricing, where they have no idea about the infrastructure necessary. They don't care about the region. And you maintain a much more complex multi-tenant system, which is a bunch of microservices that you put together, right? And so we also, again, this is an example of one of those things that's also hosted on top of us. And we'll be more than happy to share the documentation on how to do those things. But that's another next level of, let's say, iteration for your product that you can also do on top of us. So yeah, in a nutshell, I just showed you the PaaS journey. I showed you the SaaS journey. But then also you have the Agentic SaaS journey, which is the future of, imagine code is writing itself essentially. And how does that work? And how do those things interact with each other through MCP service? So a bunch of these things are what we put together today as a package, right? So please visit omnistrate.com and give this a shot. And of course, reach out to any one of us, and we'll be happy to help you.